It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that passes by unnoticed unless something cracks it wide open. I was in my usual spot, kitchen table, black coffee in hand, half-finished crossword puzzle resting beside the mug. The house creaked the way it always did, old wood groaning in places time forgot. I'm Hester Rain, 43 years old, small-town high school librarian, youngest of four. Living alone, not unhappily, but not exactly content either. Most days I just float in my own quiet bubble until something bursts it. That day, the burst came as a sharp vibration on my phone. A new message from our family group chat. Rare enough that I raised an eyebrow. We don't talk often. It's mostly weather updates and the occasional forwarded meme from my brother Keith. And Geneva, my oldest sister, the crown jewel of the family. She barely bothers unless there's a photo op or a passive-aggressive dig to deliver. But today, she sent a video. I hesitated before pressing play. Something in me braced, because drama follows Geneva like perfume. But it was early, and I was soft. I told myself, it's probably just her dogs chasing their tails again. I didn't expect the video to ruin my breakfast, my peace, and everything I believed about my sister. The clip started with shaky laughter. Geneva's face filled the frame. Fresh makeup, silk robe, holding a glass of wine though it was barely 9 a.m. Her tone was playful, flirtatious. "Hey, baby," she cooed. "Last night was—" She didn't finish the sentence. Another voice interrupted her. Male, younger, laughing. I froze. That wasn't her husband's voice, and that man who brushed past her in the frame, bare-chested, towel slung around his neck, he wasn't James. He was familiar, too familiar. Then came the name. Teddy, she said. That name hadn't passed her lips in over 2 decades, not since college. Not since he'd taken the fall for her when their car hit a mailbox and she begged him to say he'd been driving. My hand clamped the phone. I didn't even realize the coffee had sloshed onto the table. My thumb hovered, unsure if I should keep watching or delete the evidence of what I'd just seen, but the next 3 seconds confirmed it. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some play acting between her and James. This was real, raw, and not meant for me. Geneva never meant for me to see this. I sat there, paralyzed. The quiet in the house felt suddenly too loud. I couldn't hear anything but my own breath, short and sharp, and the low hum of betrayal vibrating in my ribs. In my mind, I started pulling threads, memories that had long since been packed away. Geneva always had a way of getting what she wanted, no matter the cost. When we were kids, she was the golden child. I was the overlooked shadow. I remember one birthday, I must have been 10. I had my heart set on a telescope. She told Mom I'd outgrown space stuff. I got a pink diary instead. Weeks later, I caught her in the attic using my telescope, claiming it had been hers all along. It sounds small, petty even, but that was Geneva. Sugar on the outside, poison in the seams. Always calculated, always covered. Now here I was, staring at a video she accidentally sent. Or maybe not accidentally. Could it be a trap? Some twisted way to test my loyalty? Or had she simply slipped? For a second, I didn't feel anger. Not really. It was sorrow, for James. The man who'd once driven me across state lines after my divorce, no questions asked. The man who showed up with soup when I had the flu and Geneva was off at a spa. What had he done to deserve this? And what was I supposed to do with this truth? Spill it. Confront her. Warn him? My breath caught. I needed air. I stepped outside. The morning mist was burning off, sunlight slicing through the trees in my backyard. Birds chirped like nothing had changed, but everything had. My hands shook as I leaned on the porch railing. Mama used to say, "In this family, silence is how we survive." And for years, I'd abided by that. We all had, biting tongues, burying truths, because peace was better than confrontation. Or so we were taught. But today felt different. I wasn't just holding a secret. I was holding something sharp, something dangerous. One word from me could split open a marriage. One silence could let it rot slowly. I'd seen enough of that growing up. My phone buzzed again. Another message. It read, "Recall attempt failed. Message opened." My stomach dropped. She knew. Geneva knew I'd seen it. And just like that, the silence between us cracked. She texted me just before 5. Dinner tonight, 7 p.m. Carter made that roast you like. No emoji, no explanation, just calm punctuation, like we hadn't shared the kind of secret that scorches through everything in its path. Like she hadn't just let a video slip that could crack her entire life wide open. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. My gut twisted with instinct. Don't go. But instinct had never won against Geneva, not once. And somewhere beneath the silence, I knew this wasn't a peace offering. It was a chess move, one that required me to sit at the table, whether I liked it or not. See you then, I typed. Driving up to their place always made my skin itch. Perfect landscaping, not a blade of grass out of place. Porch light already on, like she knew I'd say yes before I did. The door opened the moment I stepped out of my car. Hester, she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Right on time. She wore a fitted navy dress, hair pinned. Lipstick unmistakably the same shade as in the video, crimson, almost defiant, a detail she knew I'd catch. She stepped aside. I entered. Inside, everything looked like a magazine layout. Dim lighting, soft jazz humming from unseen speakers. The smell of overdone beef roast filled the space. Carter greeted me first. Hey, it's been too long, he said warmly, pulling me into a hug. His kindness hit like a slap. He had no idea, and that made it worse. Their son, Rowan, gave me a quick nod from his seat at the table, barely looking up from his phone. He was growing fast, taller now, shoulders squared like his father's, but with his mother's sharp eyes. We sat. Geneva poured wine, red, dry, bitter. Thanks for coming, she said with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. The dinner started polite, too polite. Carter chatted about a new client. Rowan pushed food around his plate, and Geneva floated above it all, steering the conversation like a conductor. It's funny, she said after a sip of wine, how misunderstandings happen when people get too curious. I didn't blink. Curious is how I've made a living. Librarians thrive on it. She laughed, high and clipped. Right, always the bookworm. Carter chuckled, not catching the barb beneath her tone. You two never change, he said. Geneva passed the carrots. You remember when we used to sneak into Dad's office and read his journals? Her tone shifted, nostalgic, almost tender. Except you always thought he was writing about you. I forced a smile. Turns out, he wasn't writing about either of us. She leaned in, lips barely moving. It's amazing how memory works, isn't it? Especially when therapy gets involved. I knew what she was doing. She was laying groundwork, rewriting the story, painting me unstable, fragile. If I ever spoke up, she wanted Carter to doubt my version of anything. Rowan looked up. Can I be excused? Geneva nodded. Leave your plate. I'll clear it. Once he left, the silence thickened. Carter sipped his drink, oblivious to the undercurrents. Geneva smiled at me like a cat waiting for a mouse to twitch. She leaned in again, her voice softer than before. I wouldn't want people to think you're paranoid again. I felt it then. Not fear, but clarity. This wasn't a dinner. It was a warning wrapped in silverware and linen napkins. I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned to Carter. How's that new branch going? The one near Shelbyville? He lit up, grateful for the shift. Good, really good. Might bring on a new partner. I asked questions, nodded, listened. I planted seeds, because if Geneva wanted a war, I wasn't going to show up unarmed. She noticed. Her smile dimmed just a little. She didn't like me playing a role she didn't assign. I pushed food around my plate. And the roast was dry, the wine stung. Nothing about this meal felt real, but I stayed calm. Still, because sometimes power looks like silence. After dessert, store-bought pie, a sure sign she hadn't expected me to come, we stood at the door. She hugged me, tight, perfume choking. Then, in my ear, delete the video, Hester. Or next time, it won't just be your phone that gets shut down. I stepped back, looked her in the eye, and walked to my car without a word. I woke early, long before dawn dragged the light across the sky. My mind refused rest after Geneva's whisper at dinner. I drove out to our old family home, the one Mom left in Geneva's name when she passed. It sat hollow, windows dark, siding gray from years of neglect. I still had the key, never turned it in. The house smelled like old dust and regrets. Wood floors creaked under my boots. I strode through the hallways I once knew by heart, portraits hung crooked, furniture stolen or rotted. I climbed the stairs two at a time. The attic door groaned open. Up there, morning light fought through narrow windows, illuminating a long neglected box half hidden under a tarped painting. Confession, Mom had written in flowing script I'd seen only once, inside a locked drawer. My pulse stuttered. I dragged the box toward me. The lock was rusted. I pried it free. Inside, yellowed envelopes, Polaroid photos, cassette tapes. Mom's voice recorded in clicks and hiss. One image hit me sharp. Geneva, arm around a young man I didn't recognize. Not Carter. Someone from Mom's past. I found the tape marked early 20s. Fingertips trembling, I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the attic, small and precise. She spoke of suspicious ledgers, of Geneva's charm used like a weapon. I heard Geneva, unaware she was being recorded, telling someone she'd reshaped their father's decisions during a dispute, bragging about influence, about moving money, about threatening to expose someone if they didn't comply. Tears burned behind my eyes. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was recognition. The pattern was always there. Manipulation by calm words, by silenced witnesses. I realize now, my silence helped this grow. Like allowing a weed to root in the garden, I let it spread. I remember Mom's lullaby at bedtime, how she used to hum it when Geneva was angry, how I believed Mom would protect me. Mom did protect me. She left clues. And this tape was one. The attic grew colder than it should. Dust motes floated in shafts of light. I pressed stop, heart banging against my ribs. I tucked the Polaroid into my coat pocket. I placed the tape carefully in its case. I didn't finish listening. Not yet. Some ghosts deserve their moment. As I stepped outside into the sun, I noticed a dark SUV parked across the street. Tinted windows. No plates. I froze mid-step. Had I been followed? Watched. My breath hitched. The truth weighs heavy, and the past can chase. I arrived at the college just after 11:30 a.m., coffee in hand, trying to shake off the ghosts from the attic. My office door rattled as I pushed it open. I wasn't ready to feel exposed again, but the weight I carried wouldn't let me hide. The silence in my department felt different today. Empty chairs, whispered greetings that cut cold. I passed the break room where Janet, who usually greets me with tea and small talk, looked away. It wasn't coincidence. Mr. Lee, my supervisor, asked me into his office. His face was tight, apologetic. "I've been getting messages," he said. "Notes from students, anonymous emails. Some suggest emotional instability, erratic behavior." He didn't accuse me. He didn't need to. The seed was planted. I listened, heart pounding. I asked, voice steady, "Do you believe I've ever been volatile here?" He looked down at his desk, cleared his throat. "Not personally, but people are talking." I left work early. The walk to my car felt like wading through cold water. I replayed every email, every forgotten greeting, every time a door shut just as I approached. Backyard barbecues where I was excluded. The neighbor who asked, "Are you okay, Hester?" as if I looked broken. At home, I pulled out my laptop. I recollected small messages I'd dismissed, DMs with typos, "Hope you're well," that ended with, "You seem different lately." I checked headers. Some messages came from proxy accounts. The voice in one matched Geneva's tone, soft, questioning, dismissive in a way that undermines. Geneva had rehearsed this. I remembered high school when she spread rumors about a project I didn't plagiarize, but she accused me so convincingly others believed her. That memory stung like salt. I resolved then I wouldn't let her write my story for me. I drove to Geneva's spa boutique just after dusk. I parked across the street. Neon sign flickered. Inside, lights were dim. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The date, the time, my suspicions, what I knew about the emails, the attic tape, the manipulated video. I never messed with her equipment. I didn't confront her staff. I just spoke to the night and the recording. And I called my therapist, asked her for a statement. One she'd given me years ago, confirming my stability, saved in her records. That letter, printed, signed, would be my shield when her whisper campaign turned storm. Night settled in. I locked my door, drew the curtains. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message. You really should stop digging. Not everyone wants things unearthed. Silence followed. I stared at the screen, heartbeat high. I woke up with the sun's pale light landing on my kitchen floorboards. My body ached, not from physical pain, but from carrying things I couldn't unload. That text from last night, the one with no name, no promise, just a threat. You really should stop digging. I replayed those words in the quiet, wondering if I'd misread, but nothing in my bones said I had. At work, I keep my head down. I sort through catalogs, shift books, reshelf returns. I avoid Janet in the lounge. She starts sentences, then stops. I dodge eye contact, coffee in hand. I clean the spill I don't remember making. Organizing again. Order in chaos. That's always been my refuge. My therapist agreed to write a letter confirming what she's known for years, that I'm grounded, stable. I slog through hours of silence in the staff lounge, listening for whispers, calculating every look that feels sideways. Then the staff meeting happens. It's quiet, the room full of people who have seen me always, seen me fade. When my name comes up, I speak. Softly, clearly. If anyone ever told you I was unstable, remember this. Sane people don't stay quiet just because it's convenient for others. Not accusing Geneva by name, but she heard it. The silence afterward hits heavy. Faces shift. A young adjunct, someone I barely know, later pulls me aside. He says he once worked with Geneva. He regrets staying quiet. That cracks something in me, a door I thought sealed. Evening comes. Porch light glows warm. Cicadas hum. I remember Dad saying, "Some folks speak loud to hide how empty their truth is." That line echoes now. I pull files, tape, screenshots, the video and letters, gather them in a folder on my laptop. Backup drives. One printed copy I tuck into a hollow book titled The Price of Silence. I don't carry it for show. It's for safety. I stare at the porch floorboards, at the light in the windows across the street. Everything feels heavy, but clear. I see how far I've come, from silenced, shamed, understudied, to someone who won't wait to be believed. The porch light flickers. My phone buzzes. I glance down. A photo, my house, outside, taken just moments ago. I stared at my front door, photo in hand. It showed the bushes by my porch, deep in shadows, someone's feet visible, just enough to feel exposed. My breath caught. I walked the perimeter, peered under the windows, checked every lock. Nothing, no one. My hands were steady, though. Late morning sunlight made dust motes dance in the driveway. I felt both vulnerable and sharp. When I logged onto Facebook that afternoon, I drafted a status. I wasn't naming names. I placed words carefully, like stepping stones. Someone has spent years undermining me behind curated smiles. Manipulating reputation is easy when everyone assumes your silence equals guilt. I paused, thought about deleting. I pressed post. Within minutes, comments popped up. Old students, neighbors, people who once greeted me in the hallway said, "I've wondered for years." Some messages arrived privately. I always thought she was too polished. Others were harsher. Cousins, friends of friends, saying things I knew Geneva must have started. She's bitter. Over-dramatic. It stung, but I felt something shift inside. The uncomfortable weight loosened a notch. Later, I headed to the local library for a small book reading. I'd hoped silence would shield me. But then a woman approached. Elaine. Married, worn jacket, lined face. She looked away first. "I used to work with Geneva," she said, voice soft. Not right, but I stayed quiet. She handed me an envelope. Inside, documents, notes with Geneva's handwriting, edges folded, photocopies of signed statements she'd manipulated years ago, a contact's name, someone else she hurt. Elaine's eyes pleaded. It's time someone sees what I saw. I drove home, dusk coming. I placed those documents beside the photo, the attic tape notebooks, all of it lined up on my desk. I backed them up. Cloud, offline drive, copies I could hide or share someday. That night, I sat on the porch. Crickets sang. The sky darkened. I felt empowered, no longer silenced. I realized I was building a map out of lies, forging a way out of shadows. I wasn't just pushing back, I was pulling others from the dark, too. As I shut the porch light, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, envelope, paper copy pressed between thick folds. My name stamped on a document I never signed, a forged psychological evaluation. I walked into the community hall just as the lights dimmed. Fundraiser night, local businesses under gentle spotlights. Geneva's spa booth near the front, polished brochures spread out. I knew I would be here. You can't avoid a place your family made you belong to, even when the belonging burns. People greeted me with nods, then turned away. I kept my head high. I smiled at ones who dared meet my eyes. The air tasted like clipped words and whispered judgments. Then the screen lit up. Geneva appeared, her voice warm, thanking those who helped her mother, supporters, staff. Familiar words. Then I noticed the text at the bottom, words that weren't hers. Lines like, "Without Hester, Mother would have lost everything," or, "We never spoke of your instability until you believed your own silence." I froze. The hall murmur rose. I felt betrayal crack raw in my voice, though I didn't speak yet. Something inside me shattered. I slipped backstage, pressed my palm to the wall. Geneva's assistant hovered near the AV console. I said nothing at first, just looked, USB stick labeled Edit Final, still plugged in. It hit me. The voice behind those overlay quotes was hers, but twisted. She had cut context, added words, invisible razor blades hidden in framing and editing. My heart hammered. This was no longer rumors. It was public humiliation. Geneva had built a cage of perception, and tonight she was locking the door from outside. Then something inside me peeled away the facade. I stood, turned to the audience, voice trembling. This footage is edited. Words were added. I never said those things. Eyes widened. Some nodded in relief. Others frowned in confusion. I saw Carter's face. Tight lip, sideways glance. Backstage, amid shadows and equipment racks, someone pressed a message into my hand. "Stop this, or next time, it won't be just footage." Threat thinly veiled as advice. Later, home found me in my kitchen dark, except for the oven clock's red glow. I recorded myself on my phone, no audience, no crowd. Listed what I had. The attic tape, image of Geneva with that man from the old photo, cassette with confession, manipulated speech, messages. I whispered into the lens, "I will not be gaslighted." I uploaded an unlisted video, to hold for proof if needed. I heard a knock. My heart thudded. I opened the door. Ruby, my cousin, with something in her hand. Tablet screen showed comments. She was always unhinged. Ruby's eyes flickered shame, fear, something like betrayal. I braced myself, voice low. "Why Ruby?" She said nothing. Silence stretched heavy between us. I didn't know if this moment was to destroy or begin. The sunlight angled through the kitchen windows when Ruby called me. Her voice trembled. "Aunt Geneva is having a family meeting at Aunt Carla's backyard. She says it's about you." Ruby paused. She said, "She's trying to help." My heart sank. "When someone says they're trying to help," I said, "watch for what they really want." I told Ruby I'd come. On the drive, leaves shook under tires. The rustle sounded like warning. I texted my lawyer friend. Falsified medical claims. Legal grounds. Yes, I needed every backup if this was a setup. Carla's patio was warm with late afternoon light. Chairs in a circle, Geneva sitting across from me, printout in hand like a shield. Aunt Carla, Uncle Ron, cousins, all faces I recognized from weddings and graduations, concern or regret on some, suspicion on others. Geneva's voice gentle. "We've seen your posts. I spoke to a licensed therapist. We are here because we love you. I forced myself to settle into a chair. Geneva placed the report on the small table. It claimed I'd been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, fabricated therapist, fake signature. I held my tongue until Aunt Carla leaned forward. I asked Geneva, "Who's the therapist?" She blinked. "I don't have the name handy." My cousin's husband, white coat beneath his shirt sleeves, looked at the document. Rimmed eyes narrowed. He whispered, "This header's wrong. This is forged." Shock hit me, betrayal like a punch in the gut. But I stayed steady. I asked, "Would you allow me to record this meeting, Geneva?" She refused, so I pulled out my phone. Voice calm, eyes firm. "You are either part of a lie or being used by one." I spoke of the attic tape, photos, video edits. I listed what I had: documentation, audio files, everything. Faces shifted. Geneva's jaw clenched. She said, "She's doing it again, twisting the truth." I quoted Maya Angelou because the words matter. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Ruby's shoulders trembled, tears welled in Aunt Carla's eyes. Uncle Ron stepped back. "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered. I gathered myself, stood, said nothing else. Later, Ruby walked me home. Her small hand brushed mine. "I'm sorry," she said, so quietly. Trust needs more than apologies, I thought. Night came. I closed my front door, making sure the lock clicked. My phone glowed in the dark. Email from an address I didn't recognize. Attached. Screenshot of Geneva browsing my private cloud folder 3 nights ago. Timestamp. Someone was no longer watching. They'd already broken in. 1 week had passed. Sunday came quiet, warm, with clouds that looked like they were holding their breath. I sat across from the detective at the county precinct, folder in hand. Inside were the screenshots of Geneva's fake report, proof of her accessing my private cloud without permission, and the timeline that tied it all together. Every click, every edit, every whisper that wasn't hers to spread. My lawyer friend sat beside me, firm but calm. She spoke when needed, but mostly I let the truth do the talking. There was something powerful about watching it all laid bare. Not through confrontation, not through shouting matches, but paperwork, evidence, facts. I didn't need to see Geneva again. I didn't need to fight her in the street or the living room. I needed accountability, and for once, I felt close to it. Later that afternoon, Ruby showed up with a small basket, tea bags, cookies, and a candle I'd given her years ago. She asked if we could sit on the porch. I agreed, but I didn't make it easy. We sipped quietly, leaves rustled overhead. Ruby's eyes stayed low until she finally said, "I think Geneva did something like this before. I never said anything. I didn't want to lose peace in the family." "Silence was your shield," I said. "But now, your voice can be your sword." She nodded. That was enough for today, not forgiveness, but maybe something that could one day grow into it. As the sun dipped down, I stood in front of the hallway mirror and deleted the last video I had of Geneva on my phone. Just her voice on a loop, smiling through lies. I scrubbed old emails, cleared her from every contact list. Then, I boxed up the family photos she'd mailed me over the years. I didn't shred them. I didn't set them on fire. I just mailed them back. No return note. Nothing cruel. Just done. That night, I cracked open a fresh journal. First page, blank. I didn't write about Geneva, or the attic, or who believed me, or didn't. I wrote about resilience, about who I'd become, not who they said I was. The next morning, I showed up at the library. Small women's group, maybe 10 folks. A few nervous glances, a few familiar faces. I stood at the front and told my story. Not to get sympathy, not to burn bridges, just to speak the truth, from start to finish. I didn't soften the blows, but I didn't let them define me either. They called me paranoid, bitter, broken, I said, but I was just finally awake. Applause didn't matter. The silence afterward, that was where the power lived. Heads nodding slowly, eyes meeting mine. As I walked back to my car, Dusk settling in, I noticed something stuck to the windshield. A plain envelope. No name. No return address. Just one word, scrawled in thick black ink. Again. I stood still for a moment, envelope in hand. If they thought this would scare me into silence, they still didn't understand who I'd become.